Welcome to our next apprenticeship toolbox podcast. Well, it's not really a podcast; it's a video cast, whatever that's called. My name's Matt, and today we're looking at a book. And as you can tell, this is a well-worn book. I think it was probably the first book about theological kinds of things that rocked my world. It's a book called What's So Amazing About Grace. It was published, I'm not exactly sure when it was published, quite a while ago. So this edition, 1997, it was published. So coming up to, is that 20 years? I guess it is, that this book's been around. And the reason this book rocked my world so much is because it's confronting. There is a basic truth at the heart of Christianity that is radical. But it's a basic truth that most of us might know theologically, but we don't allow ourselves to step into and live from. And it's the truth of grace. I like that early on in the book, see if I can find this quote here, Philip Yancey says, grace is the greatest gift that Christianity gave the world. And I think he's right. He says, grace is Christianity's best gift to the world, a spiritual nova in our midst, exerting a force stronger than vengeance, stronger than racism, stronger than hate. But sadly, to a world desperate for this grace, the church sometimes presents one or more forms of ungrace. The church isn't always full of grace, despite the fact that the Bible is, that Jesus was, grace incarnate. And in many ways, what I'd recommend is hand in hand with this book, listen to the song by U2. The last track off the album, All That You Can't Leave Behind, is also called Grace. And it is one of my favourite songs of all time. One of the lyrics is, Grace, she takes the blame, she covers the stain. It could be a name. Grace, it's the name of a girl. It's also a thought that changed the world. And I think what Yancey's driving at, and what Bono in that lyric is driving at, is grace is a thought that has changed the world. When Jesus turned up, and he said, "No, you don't have to earn God's favour, but that you also have to live out grace and forgive as many times as you are wrong. Forgiveness becomes part of, and grace becomes part of the whole story. It changes the whole basis of relationship with God. Every other religious system sets up rules to say, in order to be accepted by the deity or the universe that you're trying to assuage in somehow, these are the ways you've got to act, and the good people act in these ways, and the bad people act in these ways. And it's a rule-based system, and no one can ever measure up. But Jesus enters into time and space, and he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. He says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. And he introduces this incredible notion of grace. The reason, as I said, this book was so important for me, and I recommend it, is an unpacking of what that actually means. And for most of us, grace is scandalous. Philip Yancey talks about the scandal of grace. If you've heard me talk before, you've heard me talk about the back cover. See up the top there? See, this is actually the bit that I got the most out of from the book. This sentence on the back cover of the book, and it says, there is nothing we can do to make God love us more, and there's nothing we can do to make God love us less. This is the core idea of grace, that God's love for you is not based on what you have done. It makes sense for a parent. Sometimes we find our children a bit challenging, but no matter what they do, they'll always be our kids. And we will always love them. Now imagine that in terms of unconditional love, and you'll be starting to get close to what it may mean for the God of the universe. But it's an unintuitive idea, really, because we kind of believe in karma. And in the song, Bono sings, "Grace, she walks outside of karma." See, karma says, and it's a Hinduistic, Buddhistic notion that the universe is organized so that you get what you deserve. Karma says you get what you put into life, you get out of life. Grace says you don't get what you deserve. Grace says that there is a gift that is yours and available, and it's not based on what you do. It's based on the fact that God loves you. And so there is nothing you can do to make God love you anymore. And there's nothing you possibly can have done to make God love you any less. That is why it is a scandal, because some of us like to think, surely I'm a pastor. Surely, I'm putting in the hard yards. Surely God must like what I'm doing. Well, and we base our identity and our self-acceptance based on what we do. And we just get it backwards. And that way of thinking leads to a legalistic kind of life. We have to learn to live loved. Not to understand that God's love for us is unconditional. And that's why, for me, this book was so helpful. Because it's an accessible book. There's lots of stories, lots of quotes, and lots of things that are very thought-provoking. As I sort of skim through this, you'll see there's lots of yellow highlighted bits and pieces where, for me, I think God spoke to me through this book. And it really, in many ways, set me on a course. I never planned on studying theology at all, but this was a book that had impacted me so much that I think it probably set me on this path that meant ultimately I'd go and do postgraduate study in theology, and this book was pretty pivotal in setting me on that journey. But this is not an academic book. This is an accessible book. And there are lots of different versions of it. I think I've even seen a picture version of it that's worth a look. But I recommend, if you're looking for a book to read and you want some helpful realignment about what's truth and what's not, and who you are, and how valuable you actually are. Philip Yancey, What's So Amazing About Grace, published 20 years ago, but I think it's an all-time classic. I don't agree with all of Philip Yancey's politics or all kind. There's lots of other things I don't completely agree with, but this book had a huge impact on my life, and it's one I'd recommend to you. So till next week, that's the Apprentice Toolbox.